It's so hard to find good help, let me tell you, folks. James, you don't dance quite as much for the financial fitness ones as you do the Soaring Prophets, but away we go. Folks, Thursday, looking at another financial fitness episode with Patrick, presented by Soaring Prophets, and welcome. Thank you for joining us again today. What a week, what a week, what a week. Jerome Powell lighting it on fire once again. Well, this time we had this really dovish view of Jerome Powell yesterday. And the market didn't care. It was wild. Jerome comes out. He says, don't worry about, inflation. Don't worry about stagflation. We got this. We're doing the soft landing approach, folks. This is going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. And the market rallies. We're going to hit all-time highs again. We're running back up on the QQQ. NASDAQ's running. NVIDIA, all these stocks. And as soon as Jerome Powell stops talking, shuts his mouth, walks off the stage, closes the iPad, market crash into the close. But why? What's happening? What is the messaging that we're hearing from the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell? Well, it's the same shit he's been saying for 4 months now. We're going to be data dependent. And now that the data is not looking good, he's like, we're going to keep looking for data. But at what point do we actually stop and look at what the data is telling us? We're seeing hotter inflation readings. We're seeing employment static, right? And when you look at GDP falling off of a cliff, 1.6%, estimated close to 3.8, 3.9, these are slowing economies. But when we have employment numbers that are coming out, arguably, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, James, put your tinfoil hat on there, pal. I can see you in the background. But when you see these numbers that keep coming in hotter and hotter and hotter, we're starting to wonder what's happening. We've seen unemployment numbers for the last number of months redacted and reiterated that they're actually lower month over month over month over month. And now we're seeing these hot numbers. When we see employment increasing, that sort of tells us that the economy is strong. People still have jobs. But where are those jobs? Is that DoorDash? Is that part-time secondary and tertiary employment to keep the lights on? Well, people are starting to get tighter and tighter and tighter financially. We're looking at the conflicts around the world. We're sending money to the Ukraine. We're sending money into the Middle East. The monetary constraints are getting there. Our biggest problem now, we're facing this little island in the Pacific, Japan, that is now looking at bonds, looking at how are they going to save their currency. The yen has been hammered, and they're now in a position where they're going to have to fight the United States in a financial situation where they're going to have to change their policy to strengthen the yen. And Janet Yellen is not going to be a fan of that. We can't keep printing money the way that we're doing and hoping that the world just keeps buying our bonds. And you profiteers out here, we've went over this a number of times. Bonds are inversely yielding. So when people want to buy it, it drives prices down. When people don't want to buy it, it drives the pricing up. The issue now is who's continuing to buy our debt. Japan used to be a fantastic one. They're going to be pulling back if we can't get this deal done around the yen. And I think it's only a matter of time until the Japanese nation and their bank has to come out and say, listen, we have to do something to bail ourselves out. And what's that going to do? As bond yields in the United States, as they start to and continue to rise, they've bottomed and they are on a trajectory that is unsustainable. We're seeing a 2-year yield back over 5% again. This is your cost of borrowing money. This is your car loans. This is your mortgages. This is everything to do with every aspect of your financial life. And, here we are today. We're waiting for Apple to come out with their earnings. We're about 20 minutes away from the Apple earnings. We've seen the market rally today off of yesterday and Powell's, dovish talk. But what is the big guy going to do? There used to be a saying that it was as Apple goes, as goes the market. Well, we're seeing Apple up. Looks like it's about 0.5%, 1.28%. Actually, I've got it here in the top corner. The Qs are up. So right here, we've got the QQQs. You can see what's happening. This is the daily chart. We've topped. We're having this potentially could be a bear flag pattern. We're going to start probably pulling down. But what's Apple going to do today for us? Apple has been hammered, right? We see this descending wedge. Are we going to get this breakout to the upside back into the 180s, 190s? If it does, the markets are going to rally. The indices are going to rally. The problem is all of the underlying problems remain. We are in a stagflation environment. And when Jerome Powell comes out and laughs off the discussion around stagflation, that should be incredibly concerning. In his conversation yesterday, he jokes about that he doesn't see the stag or the inflation and joked about it. It's there. The writing's on the wall. We are going to have some major headwinds going forward. And I argue that most of you are already feeling it at home right now. But that sort of brings us to our guest today, Martin McLoud, joining us from Europe. He is a gentleman who is working with people to make sure that their finances are in check, making sure that it doesn't matter what the Fed does because you have an understanding of what's happening in your own personal finances. Martin, thank you for joining us, pal. So first of all,
thank you, Patrick.
The accent kills me. I love it.
Yeah, it's from Bonnie, Scotland. So
there you go. How's the weather there? Do you guys ever get sunshine?
Yeah, today it's actually been about 18 degrees, sunny. It's been like Central Europe almost. It's been like Spain. So yeah, it's been lovely. Hopefully it'll last longer.
As a good Canadian, I can appreciate nice weather finally breaks. But Martin, so again, we talk a little bit about what's going on around the world, some of the headwinds, some of the concerning things. Tell me a little bit about your background, because we talked briefly before in the green room. And one of the things that we talked about and absolutely agreed is that finance doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be this big all-encompassing, I have to spend 10 hours a day studying this sort of thing. And it sounds like you and your organization have Financial Health Club, right? You guys have really worked on putting a program, a package together to help people understand finances a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's been my passion. My background was always in finance in various roles, whether it's been as a stockbroker or being as a chartered, financial advisor. So I had this passion before COVID struck that I could help people with their finances just on a basis of actually helping them regardless of how much wealth they had, like no barrier to entry, helping them understand how to look at their finances, how to invest. I had this feeling that this wasn't rocket science because I was naturally at school a creative person. I wasn't like fixated on numbers. I wasn't some kind of like maths brain. I knew that if I could do it, anybody could do it. And I knew that if people could just learn the basics and the fundamentals, because that's the part of it that's missing in school, certainly in the UK. We don't get taught any lifestyle maths. You get taught how to calculate like trigonometry. You get taught like how to do really advanced mathematical theory, but you don't get taught the numbers that you need to know, the numbers you need to track in order to be financially successful. And I always thought it would be really easy to teach kids lifestyle maths as opposed to like really, really complex Pythagoras theorem stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're exactly right. And it's something that, we have on Financial Fitness talked a number of times about exactly that. I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and when she's got her girlfriends around, all of her friends, I talk about finance a lot. I enjoy it. So I'll ask them questions, and you talk to them anything beyond, well, my parents have a mortgage, anything beyond that. It's like, it's an abstract concept for them. And it is going to affect every aspect of their life. Like when they get up and go to work for the rest of their life, they're going to take their little paycheck and they're going to come home and they're going to pay a bank for their mortgage or their car or their whatever. They have no understanding of interest rates, how that's calculated. Why is that calculated? What happens when it goes up? What happens when it goes down? And that's where exactly what Financial Fitness and our channel is trying to do, is get that little bit higher understanding, a little bit, it sounds like a little bit beyond that first credit card, the first car, sort of like what we talked about earlier. But how are you taking your clients, the people that are joining you with Financial Health Club? What does that journey look like for them? Because you kind of come from an interesting background. And again, being a Scottish guy, I just thought you guys all made bagpipes over there. When your family makes bagpipes for a living, I just figured that's like a Tuesday. But maybe tell us a little bit about that and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so my family are all great bagpipers. I can play the bagpipes myself, and they do make bagpipes and sell them around the world, heavily in the United States and Canada. There's some great Canadian and American pipe bands. So it's been part of like our culture. It's been part of growing up, part of music. I play the guitar now. Music has been an important part of my life, and having that creative gene, I would say, has been one of the reasons that I wanted to create this company, Financial Health Club, which I believed could just get from the basis of people coming to me who, as you say, they may have a home, they may have kids, they may have a decent job, but they have all the pieces of the jigsaw, but they've never sat down and talked about it. They've never sat down and put it all together. And there's just massive gaps in the knowledge that will allow them to, that idea of paying themselves first, the idea of not paying, like, pay yourself before you pay Amazon, before you make Jeff Bezos richer, pay your family. And it is as simple as that. And it's that concept that a lot of people are missing. And once you sit down and talk about it and run the numbers for them and say, look, if you did put this in an investment for the next 20 years, this is what you're going to have. If you put money in a pension, as they call them in the UK, this is what you're going to have in the future when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60. We can look at, what could you do if you wanted £1 million? How do we reverse engineer that? What do you need to do now? And these are the things that people, you can't walk into a wealth management company and say, can you help me understand this? Or I don't have 500,000 to invest, but I have 5,000 to invest. Can you help me? They're just going to laugh you out there. They're never going to help you. It's never going to.
I think you bring such an interesting point there, and it's something that we chat about all the time, is that you can do this yourself. You don't have to be paying somebody an atrocious amount of money on the commissions. Like, when you look at the amount of money that comes off the table in a commission structure for some of these organizations, and granted, I interview these people, right? So, like, I have a vested sort of both side interest in this, but it's one of those things that you have to understand the business of the business, right? If you're going in and you're dropping money into mutual funds and hoping that, Steve Smith is a better stock picker than you are.
Yeah.
What makes Steve anything? Because his dad got him through a class? Like, I don't buy that. So that's where it is that guys like yourself that are going out there and saying, hey, let's put a package together. Let's put a portfolio together in regards to the education side. I value what you folks do in such a big way, because it's not a difficult conversation. It's just a repetitive one. You have to continue wanting to be a part of the conversation and educating yourself. What does that look like when you start onboarding people to your program?
Well, usually, like, I always say that in the first meeting with clients, I don't even want to talk about money. I want to talk about what you value, because so many people get lost in this idea that nobody really wants to collect money. What they want to do is use it as a tool to buy freedom. They want to get what it is that they truly value. Yeah. And a lot of people at times are swayed by media or swayed by parents, and they never ever sit and talk about what it is that they truly value. Even as couples coming together for the first time, what is it that you really want? What would you do if you had unlimited money? And this idea that I always use the example, somebody will say, like, what would you do if you had a lot of money? And they'll say, I'd want a red Ferrari. And then I'll ask a probing question, like, did you grow up with, like, red Ferraris on your wall? Do you test drive Ferraris? And they'll say, no, not at all. And I'll ask the question, okay, so if nobody could see you driving that Ferrari, would you buy it? And they'd be like, oh God, no. Like, I'm only buying it so that people can see me driving it. Yeah. And I'm saying, okay, so that's not you. Forget that. Like, let's talk about you. What is it you want? Because you've got this image that you're trying to put on yourself, which is somebody else's dream. What's your dream? What's going to make you happy? Because the Ferrari is never going to make you happy if it's not even something that you crave or desire in life. So I have this, like, once you delve into the true meaning of what they want, then you can start talking about the money and how to build that plan, and then educating them and investing, and educating them from the basics right through to opening investment accounts, helping them understand the difference between doing it themselves and being charged by the industry, because the industry will take a large percentage of their wealth. Now, that's fine, as you say, if you want to pay it and you believe that somebody can beat the market and you're going to pick the right one. But for most people who are starting out and don't have wealth, they just need to understand what A is, what B is, how to do it efficiently, and how to stay consistent. And the difference that staying consistent can make to their family and then the next generation, the legacy that they can leave.
Yeah, no, it's impressive, because, you said a lot in there, based on the psychological profile of your customer as well. And, the red Ferrari, like you bring up, society is saying that you need the red Ferrari, but, now you need $10 million to live comfortably with the red Ferrari that, I wish it was black. I don't even, the bed doesn't look as good as I thought it would, right? So you're keeping up with the Joneses. But someone in your position, once you get them and you can kind of break down the psychological perspective and that persona of what they're doing, they're probably far less problematic with the amount of money that they actually do need to retire and live that quality of life, because their wants, their needs, their desires aren't Ferrari. It's not champagne and caviar tastes. It can be just a really lovely existence where my children are comfortable, their education is paid for. I want to be able to help them buy a home in this economy that we're looking at now. You're probably a very successful man with your clients because they feel satisfied, as opposed to walking in being told, hey, you'll get that Lambo, brother, and it never shows up.
And I think that's the thing. You're laying out the options. You're not selling any products to them. So immediately they don't feel like they're on the back foot. They feel comfortable in the meetings because they feel like they can be completely honest. Because if you are around, and I've been in the financial industry for many years, people are sometimes loath to give you the amount of money they have because they think that you're going to immediately try and sell them something. So people are a lot more honest about how much they have. They'll say, I've got this amount of money. This is what I would like to do with it. What are my options? And you are just laying out the options for them, and then they have time to think about it. In between meetings, they'll come back with, well, why don't we run this scenario? Okay, we've changed our mind. Why don't we run that scenario? And you won't have these opportunities, as you know, when you're working as a financial advisor, for example. You'll spend very little time with clients, and there's so many clients and so little time. You won't be spending hours and hours and hours with these people running different scenarios of their future. You won't be spending hours talking and helping them understand basic money mindset techniques, as well as understanding some of the basic maths that they're going to need to calculate their net worth, or to calculate some of the, make sure that their savings rates are high enough. So I guess it's just trying to get them to think more financially savvy and to educate the next generation so their kids are good with money, because money mindset is learned by the age of like 7 years old for a lot of people. So you want the next generation to grow up. I'm passionate about the next generation understanding investing, because understanding and watching it grow. We've got great tax efficient means in the UK where people can invest in junior ISAs and pensions, and if they even put in small amounts, they'll have many millions for their kids in the future from really doing very little, but doing it at such a young age. It's got such a long time to compound. And that idea that, as Albert Einstein called compounding the eighth wonder of the world, and you wonder why we studied everything else in school that Einstein said except that one thing, which it does leave you thinking, like, is there a conspiracy? Because it just seems ridiculous that that's the one thing we didn't study.
Yeah, it's wild when we study every aspect, like you say, of his life, his teachings. I don't know E equals MC squared, why it works. I just know that is the saying. That other one, we better not tell the dumb masses that. But I think you talk about that generational wealth creation and getting the children at that young age and understanding what that looks like. I told you before, I got a 14-year-old daughter, and very proud of her, excellent athlete. She was actually, her school was on way to Edinburgh to take you guys on in rugby. Rugby player.
Rugby.
I'm sure a bunch of Canadian girls getting off a plane would just have you guys shivering over there, I'm sure. But it was, she has watched me I've got multifamily residential portfolios here. I, again, watch the markets on a daily basis. And it's pretty neat when you can have a 14-year-old girl sit beside you. And again, we're watching Apple's earnings roll out here as we speak, right? And she's over here talking about, what's happening in the market. Why did Apple go today? Our thoughts today was that Apple was going to have, this potential rocket ship of a day because they've been so beaten down. So any news is good news, right? And she's understanding that at sort of a young age, the psychology of that, what it looks like to go in and put a deal together, right? James, one of the deals I put together, I bought a multifamily building on a boat when I was with him. So that's a cool story that now I want to be able to pass that on to my daughter, right? These are these things that I want to see her be successful. But you have to have the conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Money's taboo in so many families, isn't it? They just don't talk about money. And that's the problem I see with a lot of clients. They'll get really frustrated because they'll say, my dad's been investing in the stock market the whole time. He just never told me. And you're thinking like, well, why you're doing the right thing. You're educating your daughter because essentially, like I've got this. If you think about like going out into your garden and you were to plant flowers or trees, and if you do that as a family and you watch that grow as a family, there is no way they're going to let you go out with a chainsaw and take that down, because they now feel like they feel as if that's part of the family. And if you're watching money grow and watching the stock market and talking about things like that, and if once they get money when they're older, they're never going to have that kind of cavalier attitude to it. They'll understand the meaning of money. They'll understand how powerful investing is. So like what you're doing is incredible for the next generation, and that needs to be done by more. Money should not in this day and age be taboo. I think it's less taboo in the USA than it is in the UK, and I don't know what it's like in Canada. If
Right.
it's if you talk about it more in Canada probably than it is in the UK.
That's interesting. I've never thought of it that way, like from a cultural perspective. Again, my last name's Ahern. We're Irishmen, and coming from that, it wasn't a thing. My father grew up incredibly poor, and it was something that he worked his ass off. But I think, coming from that poverty that he grew up in, his father died when he was 2 years old. He had, 2 siblings and himself. That's a hard existence in the 50s in Canada. Well, now all of a sudden, he's worked his tail off. He's a multiple business owner, was an engineer by trade, hoisting engineer. Now he's instilled that in me, that you got to pick yourself up. There's got to be some hustle that goes along with that, right? And now this is the next generation, though. This is the generational problem, is that third generation, the wealth creation. Sometimes we see to this massive, I hate to say, but it's the silver spoon generation. My daughter more or less wants for nothing, but it's in how we distribute those blessings, right? As a father is important. I'm blessed with the fact that, she's had a job. She's 14 years old, has had a job for 2 years now. She has about $5,500 sitting in a bank account that she's like, that's my first car. I'm not touching that. I'm not investing. I'm not nothing. I'm like, that's great. So what are you investing? Like, what's your next move? What is accumulating money? So she's in a high interest savings. Let's start there. Let's not get her stung on her first deal, and then we continue to move from there. But again, it's about getting out there, having her with me, but for those conversations about, landlords. We have problems. We got to deal with tenants. She's there with me dealing with them. She's calling references. It's so important. So Martin, as you're bringing clients in, you're talking with them, you're working through some of the problems. How does your course work? How does the Financial Health Club itself work? What does that look like?
Well, I do run group courses as well. Like I was running one last night, so there was for 12 at a time, where we're doing like courses where we're taking people from ultimately a beginner right through to opening investment accounts. So that's like an ultimate beginner's course, and I'm building one which will be the kind of next level, which will be looking at maybe picking stocks and picking funds, that kind of thing. So, that'll be more based on my background. And for those that have got an active interest in picking shares, because as you know yourself, like 95% of the stock market is like basically toxic waste. And it is, if you can separate the good companies from the rest, then it can become a really, really profitable business for you. But most people have a problem because they are naturally going to put far too much into one stock, and they're not going to diversify, but they're also not going to understand what a good company looks like, in terms of a good company earns money, it has profits, it returns its capital, it has good free cash flow, it doesn't have large debts, and is trying to find oil with absolutely no earnings somewhere in the middle of a country you've never heard of, which is kind of how we all started making mistakes. I used to do that. I made mistakes from the very outset many years ago when I used to buy stocks. So I want to help people not make those stupid mistakes that I made.
Yeah. If you can put yourself in a situation and not blow your account up, you're probably ahead until you can get the information. And that's the thing. We had so many people go through the GameStop and the AMC COVID piece where they're just like, I'm glued to my screen every morning, seeing what's happening with, the short squeeze program that was going on with that. And I think we had a lot of people that jumped into the market that had never had it, never wanted it, never knew anything about it.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this old saying that when your fitness instructor at the gym starts giving you stock picks, get the fuck out. Like, it's time to cut. That is not.
And it is. It's true across the world, because like I was sitting in the hairdressers, and people were talking to me about like buying property, buying stocks, and Bitcoin, and I thought, this is the end, because, and it's so true, but everybody talks about it, but it's when you're getting calls from left, right, and centre, and people are talking about giving up their jobs to trade when they've never placed a trade in their life, and you're thinking, right, that's it. We've definitely reached the top. The last man is standing, effectively.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so you bring up Bitcoin. What is your, again, personal take? We won't get into the business take on it. What is your personal take? Because everyone that I interview here, I have had people that are mortgage the house, Bitcoin's going to $1 million. I am all in on Bitcoin. And then I have people that are like, burn it down. Like, this is stupid. I don't understand it. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm definitely in the second camp. I don't doubt that people can make money in Bitcoin. In fact, somebody who was like an IT guru many, many years ago, in about 2009, told me about Bitcoin, and probably then I should have listened. But it's never something I've invested in. It's because I genuinely can't value it. I was obviously trained to understand stocks and how to value them. They obviously have earnings, they have dividends, you're getting an income from them. They are selling real things to real people. These companies have been going for many, many years. You can see a long runway ahead of them. I just don't have enough information or knowledge about. And I also, as I think it was Ray Dalio said, it is supposed to be a store of value in some sense. So you're supposed to be able to walk into a car garage and say, I'll give you 1 Bitcoin for that car, shake hands and come back next week. And I've never understood how it can be a store of value when it can half and double within a matter of days or weeks. So I guess it's not something like that I personally have ever invested in. I'm not saying that people can't make money in it, but I prefer the kind of the Warren Buffett approach, if you want to call it that idea that if I don't understand it, I don't go near it. I want to see something tangible that I can look at and see how that can grow in the future, and that it's on an upward trend of a company that's got a big runway ahead of it.
Well, and again, you bring up Mr. Buffett, Warren there. He gave a great example one time, and he said, when I buy Coca-Cola, if the world ends tomorrow, like if the World War III breaks off, Coca-Cola is still going to sell Coca-Cola. Yeah. If something happens to Bitcoin and the world ends and we don't have internet anymore, we don't have Bitcoin. So he goes, I really like things that have an intrinsic value. I like that it's going to be able to be, workable, that the product is going to be out there again the next day. I sleep and Coca-Cola is being sold. That's my business.
Yeah. I think that's true. Like, as they always say, like, who would care if Bitcoin went bust? Or genuinely, probably not that many people in the world. But if Coca-Cola stopped selling Coca-Cola, or McDonald's stopped selling McDonald's, people would riot. People would care. You know what I mean? So people.
Those Americans, I tell you. I love that, pal. So, Martin, tell me a little bit about how people get in touch with you. How do we do some business with you? And kind of, what's a piece of advice for people in this sort of tumultuous environment as far as finances? And I know I wanted to dive a little bit more into what's going on in Europe, because we followed the Americans so much in our models. Everything we do is very US driven. Yeah. But, you folks have been hit, and the war in Ukraine hasn't been kind to Europe on a whole. I know that energy has been a big problem for you folks, and working through that problem after the pipeline explosion. Yeah. Maybe start there. How's Europe doing? And I know that you speak entirely for Europe, so I appreciate that as a representative. And how do people do some business with you?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy times. Energy prices were ridiculously high for homeowners. The gas, electricity prices soared. And at a time when interest rates, obviously, because of what was happening with the prime ministers in the UK and the changes of government, and it was all chaos, and interest rates were soaring. There was high bills. Now we've reached a point where obviously interest rates may have peaked, but we're now starting to see unemployment rising. We're starting to see house prices actually falling. They've fallen the last few months in the UK. People possibly waiting for interest rates to come down in order to maybe look at buying property. The FTSE 100 is at an all-time high, obviously being more of a containing more dinosaur companies, as we call them, less technology. It's very much cyclical companies that are involved in the FTSE 100. So there is the positives in the newspapers in the UK about the FTSE 100, but perhaps underlying there's still a nervousness about inflation's not coming down fast enough. We are still in a period where there is a concern in the UK just generally because you maybe didn't have this in America where people transferred out of final salary pensions and were able to retire early. So there's loads of skills being lost to the market. There's people that will never have to work again after COVID because they've got enough money. It's invested in the stock market now. It used to be in final salary schemes. It used to be an income only, but now they have it and they have it available as cash. So these people no longer need to work. So there is a skill shortage as well. That is a concern for the UK, and it's going to be interesting to see how that develops this year. In terms of working with me, my website is financialhealthclub.co.uk. I am on LinkedIn posting every day. I will be hopefully doing a lot more on TikTok, trying to educate, trying to give you some stories of my experiences in the financial industry and how I help clients either on a one-to-one basis or in a group coaching sessions. All I'm trying to do is essentially get people financially savvy. I really don't think it's rocket science. I do believe anybody can learn this. I'm a creative. I learned it, believe me, and I am no genius. So we can all be better with money, but we need to talk about it. As you say, you absolutely must talk about it. Take your money on a date. That's what I say to people. Put a date in your diary. Take your money on a date.
I love that, man. That is a great. I'm going to steal that. That's going to steal. Folks, thank you so much for joining us with another episode of Financial Fitness presented by Soaring Prophets Media. Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. James, cue up the Scotland the Brave.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.